Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of the Wiccan Conservative. Today, I didn't want to discuss politics. Today, I kind of want to discuss the supernatural. We always talk about the supernatural as being something more than natural. That's kind of why we call it the supernatural. But what if it was just natural? I've been contemplating this a lot lately. So today I wanted to do a little bit more comparing and contrasting, especially terms that we hear all the time on all sides of the aisle, like darkness and light and demons and angels and good and bad. What a what do these words really mean to you? What do they mean to your faith? And how do you use these words to describe experiences in your life? Let's start with darkness. Darkness tends to have a negative connotation attached to it. It's a patsy for bad behavior. It becomes the scapegoat for negative actions, for bad things, and it oftentimes gets labeled as evil, self worship, Satanism. Darkness has a lot of bad connotations to it. But when you talk to a witch about darkness, darkness is just the opposite of light. Without darkness, light could not exist. But why does it have to have a negative connotation attached to it? Because people typically associate light with being airy, being the right way, being associated with good, being designed for selflessness, for charity. Beholden to God is to be beholden to the light. It's the preferred path. But why is it the preferred path? The light and having all things exposed is very useful. It can be very good. It can be very cleansing. It can be very healing. But there are some things that we work on, that we need to perform, that doesn't need to be done in the presence of the light, in the presence of everybody, in scrutiny, or in some shining example. Some things that are done in a very kind manner, some of the best things happen in the dark. They happen when nobody's watching, and they happen away from everybody else. And I think it's really important to realize that both of these energies play off of each other, and you can't really appreciate one without the other. So when we go through our day-to-day activities and we describe the activities of underhanded, shady behavior as being dark, negative behavior, I just don't think that it's a accurate portrayal of what is actually happening. And I think that it dulls the perception of that behavior. I think that it doesn't sting as hard if you say things like criminals operate in darkness or democracy dies in darkness. That almost makes it seem like as long as we keep it light and as long as we keep shining light on these things, then they won't happen. But that's not necessarily true, because when you look at some high profile individuals in certain positions of power throughout many different areas and aspects of the world, and you see the way that they abuse their power openly and in public, it blows that perception of dark to hide and light to expose. It destroys that concept because we can see evil and go along with it, even in the light. Evil doesn't need the darkness to survive, if that's what you want to call it, because we also have good and we also have evil. These are terms that are used all the time. But what really makes a person good and what really makes a person evil? When we see somebody acting a certain way towards a person, we get a snapshot in time as to who that person might be. And that's where certain prejudice and stereotypes and all those things come into play. But that might not necessarily be the way that person is. And I hear a lot of this attached to supernatural energy or paranormal experiences. It was a good entity, it was an evil entity based upon a snapshot of an interaction with something that most people really don't believe in and can't describe or put their finger on what exactly it is that they're trying to describe happening, anyways. And it's normally associated with a gut feeling that you get about this interaction as to whether you denote a good interaction or an evil interaction. But I think that a lot of that feeds off of your own internal knowledge, what you know, if you know how to deal with it, your reactions in the past to things that have happened to you, and what you plan on doing with the knowledge that you have. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it happens all at once. And you think about it in the moment when you're dealing with a supernatural entity. I've heard a lot of people go through a wave of emotions and they talk about all these feelings that they have all at once when they're presented with these types of experiences. And usually that's what leads them down the path of feeling like that it's an evil entity or an evil spirit or an evil experience. And most people won't look beyond their own feelings to devise whether the actual event had a good connotation or a bad connotation or no connotation to it whatsoever. I feel that the words good and evil, in and of themselves, bring such emotion with them that you automatically think good and rainbows and sunshines and fairy dust. And then you have your evil and it's ugly and it's horrid and it's mean and it's wretched and destructive and greed and all of these evil things that, if overindulged in on either side, can end up having negative impacts. And a witch will tell you that is why balance is so important in our lives in every aspect that we do, and why a lot of us tend to be over analyzers and think things way beyond where they need to be. Now, Good and evil brings us back to the angels and demons concept. So if we are constantly putting things into a dark and light, a good and bad, it boils down eventually to the argument of angels and demons. This is a topic that is sensitive to everybody. Personally, I don't believe in demons. I don't personally believe in angels as the holy sense of the word. Now, when we get into talking about biblical people who were known to exist in the world and then ascended into heaven based on their own writings, then we can talk a little bit deeper into that aspect. But for this particular demonstration, we're just going to talk about the stereotypical angels and the stereotypical demons. Demons are something that a lot of people believe in because, in my opinion, of the good, bad, stereotypes, that negative connotations that are put onto them. So anytime that somebody has a bad interaction with a spiritual entity, they tend to automatically, because I don't want to offend anybody here, assume that it is a demon or a satanic entity that is sent here to attack them. And that is how they justify not understanding where this energy is coming from, what it actually needs or was doing, or how it really interacted with you. Because a lot of people get into a dreamscape atmosphere or a OBE experience with demonic presences, and they are mystified by the experience that they're having, first off with the OBE, and then being in contact with a spiritual entity on the spiritual plane, again with the high emotions, not understanding fully what's going on, whether or not that person is versed or not versed in metaphysical planes. These are the things that overwhelm a person who has this experience, and it can leave them with a bad taste in their mouth and make them feel like they are under a demonic possession, whether they're some people feel like they have demons attached to them. There's lots of things that go on to these experiences that make people feel bad about them, and I've always wanted to know how really it went, because you get a lot of Hollywood production when you're retelling these ghost stories from personal experience to mass consumption. So I always find it more rewarding to speak to people on an individual basis about their individual experiences, and we can dig into what happened and what was actually going on beyond the experience, because people tend to hyper focus on themselves and what's happening right there in front of their faces, that they forget little things that led up to this experience, or they forget things that were happening around them during the experience. And each individual supernatural experience in and of itself is unique. So it's almost like collecting pebbles or rocks, and each one is the same. It's a rock, but they have their own identifying markers. So there's a lot of, in my opinion, parallels in religions. Too many overlap for it to be as black and white as, say, a demonic entity or a satanic thing or one true evil. There's so much out there, and so much lore that has been brought from cultures and people and entities that were concocted in people's heads to explain earth movements. They were here to explain different actions of the sun. They wanted to explain the stars and why the grass grew and why the wind blew. And we tend to take the scientific definitions of these things and compartmentalize it and say, okay, so now that we know that it didn't have anything to do with a mystical entity making the grass necessarily grow, we tend to kind of throw that off into the closet and not think about it. But when these metaphysical changes happen in our environment, science is the last place that we kind of go to. And through my own meditation, through my own reading, through my own understanding, I have found a striking balance between science and religion and how we as humans fit into the balance of that environment, of our environment. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot. This is what I'm talking about whenever I say that it's always good to keep one firm foot in rooted fact and another foot in the abstract. And I say abstract because that covers a lot of bases. It covers the content that we are talking about right now in the supernatural realm, in the metaphysical realm, in the mind, in your thoughts, in your religious realms, but you also have to figure how that ties back into your real world, your facts that you already know to be true. Up is up, water is wet, fire is hot. Those sorts of things in order for you to have a better understanding, a better knowledge of things that happen maybe in and around you, supernaturally speaking. So, my last thoughts and words on the subject are going to be intent and manipulation of already existing energy is what I believe manifests good, evil, dark, light, um, positives, negatives, those sorts of things. Your intent with your materials, and remember that you have materials available to you all the time. It's all around you. Everybody has a vibe, an energy. A lot of people are really good at reading those vibes and those energies. Think about that whenever you're just when you're having your discussions about your darkness and your light. Think about why they have those connotations. Start thinking about some positive things that are associated with darkness. I know everybody likes to throw sleep out there, and sleep is a very positive thing. It's good for the body. It helps you regenerate, rejuvenate, brings you rest. That's a very positive thing that a lot of people won't associate with darkness. Um, Light, anything that's done in the light that is negative, that nobody, I mean, goodness gracious, not to get political in the supernatural chat, but look at what's happening in our higher ups and in our governments who have the hottest white light shown upon them right now, and how evil and corrupt they appear to be at their core when they attack our human rights and our values. So, this has been something that has been bothering me that I just kind of wanted to touch base with you guys, and throw a little bit of kink into your daily thinking. But if you guys have anything to add, throw it into the comments section. Welcome to all the new subscribers, and I will catch you guys on the next one.